Greetings, YouTube. Anyone seeing this video is watching it on a device that allows you to have access to an infinite amount of information just at the press of a button. But there was a time when that wasn't available. I can remember that time because while the internet did exist when I was younger, most people didn't have access to it. It originally was designed for the military so that in the event of a nuclear exchange, all of the military personnel would still be able to access their porn. And then eventually it moved into the academic fields and then to the whole world, and eventually became the interwebs as we know them. Prior to that, you still could live in a world immersed in data. Television, both cable and over the airwaves, your phone, daily newspapers, radio, telegrams, actual telegrams, could still immerse you in data. But if you go to an earlier time, there was only one true source of knowledge, and recorded data is what I'm talking about, because you could always transfer information by word of mouth, like I'm doing now. And that was because of the printed word. Movable type. I'm not going to go all the way back to the original Gutenberg press. And at one time, there were probably only going to be a few books in your average household, and at least in most Western cultures, one of those books, of course, would be the Bible. And the other book would be a reference, what we would probably refer to now as a desk reference. And many years ago, I can't remember how long, maybe like 15, I stumbled upon a book in a used bookstore. Oddly, it was a military store. It sold military memorabilia and reference books, but this particular book was general knowledge. And I bought it for a number of reasons. One, it was only $6, and it was physically, this is a very attractive book. And it's just kind of great. Look at that typeset, man. Isn't that typeset just awesome? And it's just a beautiful book. And this is a 1914 edition of a book that was originally printed in 1908. But I believe that a lot of the research from it was from an earlier 1898 volume, if I'm not incorrect. And this book covers, and I read, history, language, literature, biography, geography, travel, art, government, politics, industry, invention, commerce, science, education, natural history, statistics, and miscellany. Now, this in and of itself would make this book something that would be attractive to me, because I love facts, I love data. But let's face it, even when I bought it, at the end of the last century, it was out of date. I mean, it was from 1914, and multi-volume encyclopedias had outstripped its usefulness, even in its own existence, in the time it was printed. But this could be quite possibly the only reference book that you'd find in a household other than the Bible. No, what sold me on this was the timeline. I am a sucker for a timeline. In fact, I've done a video series about a timeline I wrote years ago for a science fiction campaign based on the Justifiers role-playing game. Now, this timeline in this book is very detailed, as you would imagine for a book designed to cover history. Now, for me, the reason I bought this book is this right here. I'm going to try to bring this way up close so you can see it. See what that says right there? 4004 BC, creation of the world, fall of man, birth of Cain, death of Abel, and the first subject of death. This book, in black and white, says that the beginning of the world was in the year 4004 BC. And I saw that in the bookstore. And I smiled, and I had to own it. Because right here in print was the work of Archbishop Ussher in his effort to codify the beginning of the universe by working backwards from the number of generations that would be required to have to have described all of the information in the Bible. So essentially, he took the Bible and worked backwards from when it was printed or written, how many generations there would have been to encompass the entire history described in the Bible. And he arrives at 4004 BC, October 24th, I think, was the day that he believed the world started on. I'm not positive. It was odd that it was in October. I always thought that was strange. That wouldn't you want it to, if you're going to place the beginning of the universe firmly in the Western timeline, wouldn't you want it to be January 1st or December 25th or something like that? But nope, it was in the middle of October or the end of October. So, I mean, I love this book physically because of its heft. I mean, it's a big book. It's a hefty book. It's got a wonderful feel to it. I mean, look at the inside. Look at that. You just don't find books with this kind of quality printing. I mean, this thing's almost 100 years old, and it is in excellent shape, and it will be here 100 years from now because I'm going to take care of it, and I'm going to pass it on to someone who hopefully will take care of it as well. But this book, to me, represents a model of thought, a way of looking at the world that doesn't exist anymore. And that's fascinating. Well, at least it shouldn't exist anymore. There are, unfortunately, people out there who would probably tell you that the world did, in fact, begin in the year 4004 BC. They would be wrong, but it's not going to stop them. And I support their right to believe that. It just isn't going to be fact. It's going to be a belief. And I can't stop them. I wouldn't even bother trying to stop them from having a belief. But this is a wonderful thing. It is the standard dictionary of facts. And it shows a way of looking at the universe from a bygone era. One that was comfortable. It was controlled. It was standard. It wasn't revolutionary. It wasn't going to change. It wasn't going to scare you. It was presenting you with a worldview that was very comfortable. And I love that about this book. And the physical structure itself, it is just a beautiful book. I own a number of books in my collection that I own simply because I find them interesting physically, even if I don't find much use for them, for their content. But this book is both. It is interesting for its content, and it is a wonderful physical object. And there's nothing in the world quite like the smell of an old book. Not mold. Mold is not a good smell. You don't want mold in your books. No, but the smell of an old book. Something that an e-reader is never going to replace. So remember today, when you look at this video on the most technically advanced piece of machine that you're probably going to encounter today, that there was a time when that book may have been your only access to the data you needed, even if it was slightly skewed data.